Hi guys, thank you for coming. Hi everybody online. So I started a site called Modamily, which is short for Modern Family. It all kind of started in New York a few years ago. I was out to drinks with a lot of my friends, many of them women who were in their mid to late 30s, and they all had dreams of becoming a mother, but didn't have the guy. They were on the more traditional mainstream dating sites like Match.com and OkCupid and JDate. And they were meeting interesting people, but usually the relationships would last a few weeks or months and then fizzle out. But a lot of the women especially were feeling the pressures of the biological clock. And they started talking to me about, I have to start having a kid in the next couple of years, or it's going to get very difficult for me to have a kid. And I don't know if I'm going to meet the guy that I want to spend the rest of my life with in the next couple of years. And so they were looking at other options, using an anonymous sperm donor or adoption. And those options weren't too appealing with them because they didn't want to be a single parent. They wanted someone to be involved also, and they also wanted their child to have some kind of masculine influence in their life. So I started thinking about it, and everyone knows people always sometimes have kids and they're not always married, and it's been happening for thousands of years. But not many people make a conscious effort to think about finding a good parenting partner. Whether you're married or not, that's irrelevant because you can still raise a kid, who's happy and healthy even if you're not married, and as long as there's two people or more or three or four who are involved in the child's life, provided love, encouragement, and support. And I started looking around, and there was not really any sites like this except for a couple in Europe, and they were more like sperm donor message board sites. Mostly for LGBT couples looking for sperm donors, and there were no pictures, and there was no compatibility questions or anything like that. So I just kind of took the idea of more of the mainstream sites, like the OkCupids and the Match.coms, and brought it for a completely different purpose, where you create a profile and you can search around for people who are also ready to become parents. And maybe you guys can find someone who shares your vision and value system based on questions that you answer. Say you want to raise your child in the same religion as you. If that's a deal breaker, really important that you want someone else that is also open to that, then we'll introduce you to someone like that. And there's so many other, couple hundred questions. So there's a little introductory animated tour video that I can show you, and I think it'll explain what Modamily is.
Hi, I'm Melanie, and this is little Lucy. I'm raising her with my co-parenting partner, Paul, whom I met through Modamily, an online community for finding a co-parent or known sperm or egg donor. Modamily works a lot like a dating site, but instead of looking for a date, members are looking for someone to have and raise a child together without romantic involvement. Let me show you some of the features that make Modamily work. The Parenting and Lifestyle Quiz helps you find someone who shares your most important values and visions for how you want to raise your child. The profile page then gives prospective candidates a glimpse into your world. A short video allows you to introduce yourself. And the inner circle highlights the 5 most important people in you and your future child's life. Note that members have the ability to submit all kinds of information to authenticate things, like their photo, age, and income. Furthermore, you're able to express what type of custody and financial arrangement you're looking for, and what your values and parenting approach are. Meeting your perfect partner or donor is only half the task, and the Learn page is your go-to resource to learn all about co-parenting laws, fertility options, and more, so you know how to proceed. When Paul reached out to me, I was able to see from his profile that we had similar views and backgrounds. And when we decided to take the next step, we drafted a co-parenting agreement, got health and background checks, and decided to get pregnant via artificial insemination. After Lucy was born, I found it very comforting to have Paul around. And now we get together once a week to discuss Lucy's care. Before I heard about Modamily, I thought I'd have to be a single mom or not have children at all. And it's amazing to be empowered to create a family on my own terms. Modamily puts together people in all different types of modern family arrangements. Create the modern family you're looking for. Modamily. Bring your dream to life.
Cool. So that's what Modamily does. And thank you. So now I have a great panel who, we have a team of expert advisors because a lot of people don't even know what co-parenting is and don't know how to go about it. So not only did we launch a personal concierge service where I personally get involved and talk to people on the phone, send them curated match recommendations, figure out who they are and what they're looking for, and kind of try to guide them through the whole process. But people looking to do this need a team of experts to help them to do it responsibly. They need lawyers, they need therapists, they need fertility doctors. So we have a couple of them right here, and then we also have a real life co-parent, Rachel Hope. She's she's done this twice already. She has a 23-year-old son right now that she co-parented with someone she's known for a long time, a friend of hers, and now she has a beautiful 4-year-old daughter, Grace, who she's also co-parenting with someone that she's known. And she wants to have another child, and we're helping her with that as well. And she also wrote a book about it called Family by Choice, Platonic Partnered Parenting. And Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about how your expertise in this area?
Well, I like the term partnered parenting better than co-parenting, only because co-parenting has been used so much for post-divorce recommendations by the court. And that's kind of what I was looking at avoiding when I first did this, is I didn't want to take those kinds of risks. I didn't think I was necessarily called towards, I think the sanctity of marriage is like a sacrament. I didn't necessarily feel called to that, but I did feel called to be a parent, and I was ready. So, and I didn't want to get into a divorce situation or rush into anything. So partnered parenting is what I came up with, and that's basically what the book is about, how to do that responsibly and have an intact, sustainable family that works for everyone.
Cool. And she also runs a website called partneredparentingmagazine.com. You guys can check out later. To her right is Dean Masserman. He's an attorney specializing in modern families at Vorzimer Masserman, a great firm in LA here. And do you want to talk a little bit about your connection to the topic and what it is you do exactly?
Yes, thank you. In the last 20 years, I've been a lawyer for 26 years, but in the last 20, we focused on family formation, family law, surrogacy, egg donation. And have really been involved from the very beginning with the proliferation of different ways in which people can create a family, whether it's gay men, lesbian couples, single parents, transgenders. And our firm was, in fact, the first firm to get the first straight and the first gay pre-birth judgment of paternity or maternity in California, and I think in the whole United States. What that's transitioned to is we also do regular family law, which would be divorce, custody, support type of issues. And that's created a dynamic where we're really the only firm in this area that is involved in the formation or the creation of families, and also the other side, which is the dissolution of families. So we're in a very unique position to be able to address how to create a successful co-parenting relationship. Now, as a lawyer, successful for me is somewhat of a different definition. For me, a successful co-parenting relationship, obviously the best one is where the people have this beautiful dream and this vision and they live it out and they never have a problem. But as a lawyer, in the real world, many times people grow apart, they disagree, and we need to have a co-parenting agreement in place that we know is valid and enforceable under the laws of the state in which the people reside, and enforceable in a court if they don't agree. So having the experience of doing it on both ends makes us uniquely qualified to help sites like Modamily and people like Rachel to have a successful co-parenting relationship and avoid problems that can arise.
Thank you, Dean. To Dean's right is the lovely Elaine Gordon. She's a therapist that works a lot with modern families as well. And Elaine, can you introduce a little bit about what you do?
Sure. I'm Elaine Gordon. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And before I tell you who I am, this is not an exciting story. I just tripped and fractured my knee. That's it. Everybody's been asking me, so I've got that over with. Anyway, I've been working in the field of reproductive medicine for, I keep saying 20 some odd years, and then somebody reminded me today it's 30 some odd years. So I've really seen it all in terms of when reproductive medicine, IVF, just started in the United States and England, and I've seen a change where all kinds of alternative options are now available. I work with individuals, whether they're partnered or not partnered, wanting to have children, and I help them, guide them through the process so they're making a good decision for themselves. I don't make their decisions. I just sort of educate them, I work with them, and I hope to help people do what's right for them. I also screen egg donors, sperm donors, and surrogate mothers. I've been doing that for a very long time. And I think a lot of people come to these options bright-eyed and bushy-tailed or very, very scared. And there is what I call a learning curve. People come to my office and they don't know what they're going to do, they don't want to do anything, and over time they just get used to that there are all kinds of ways to build families, and I work very hard in trying to help them find their path.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, so we work with people who are all different versions of the modern family, from people looking to do a 50-50 co-parenting relationship where you split everything, to a lot of gay and lesbian couples looking for known sperm donors where they want someone to have like a more limited great uncle kind of role, and everything in between. Basically, it's just a community where everyone is ready to have a child, gay, straight, everything, and just putting people together who are ready to do that and find someone who shares your vision and values for how you want to do that. And it's not meet someone online and have a baby trying to get pregnant next week. It's getting to know this person. They're becoming a friend, developing a trust, and they're going to help you do this, and they want to do it for themselves as well, and find someone that they get along with, to do this. So it is like a real intimate, relationship. So Rachel, why you've been doing this for a while. Why did you want to do co-parenting instead of the more traditional ways of having kids or getting married or such?
Before I answer that, I wanted to chime in that I recommend, and on this, a minimum of 12 months of an active getting to know you courtship. That's like every week, or going to counselors, going to lawyers, going to accountants, and making a plan. So I just wanted to chime in. Why did I do this? It's 24 years ago when I came up with this idea, and I have all these great reasons as far as I applied ideas of sustainable agriculture to sustainable social systems, and I had all these reasons why I did this. But to tell you the most emotional reason that I had is I met somebody that I knew my child would look at and go, "That's my dad. That's my dad." Would be that child. My child would be so proud to be this person's child, and that I respected him. He kept his agreements. He was smart and kind, and this is a person I thought would make a great father. We had no romantic chemistry. There was no affinity between us, and I thought this would be a huge mistake if I didn't have children with this person. And he had no intention, it was mutual. He had no intention of having a traditional, conventional marriage. We started to talk and negotiate for about 6 months over the phone about our vision, about having a family, about our values. We got down into the most nitty-gritty of who we are. And we decided we can do this. We can do this. We thought this is still very experimental. What if it blows up on our face? What if people reject us? What if we're persecuted? What if our kids made fun of? What if? Well, it worked. 24 years, we parented together, most of the time on the same property, and we were very aligned. That's not always going to be the case. I think we kind of just, it was kind of very lucky. And we didn't have that many roadblocks and challenges to work through. But back to my reason, that was like the reason I came up with it. This is the person that I knew would be a fantastic parent to parent with.
And now with with Grace and Paul. Paul's a guy who you've known for a long time, right? And originally he was going to be more just of a known donor, right? And he was living in a different city, and then things changed. You want to talk a little bit about how that happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to have another child, and my son's dad was like a zero population guy. So he didn't want to have more children, supportive of me having more children to find another parenting partner. That was a little tough because I didn't have Yvonne at the time to match me up. I had to go to my circle of family and friends. And the person that really made sense was my son's godfather. So I had known this man. He would have never agreed to a parenting partnership, but he couldn't say no because he had witnessed it working. He was there. He saw it working. So he agreed to be a known donor. And this to me was a compromise because I had really believed in at least a two-parent family, completely dedicated. And he was willing to be a known donor, contributing financially, but not being a hands-on parent. I compromised that because I really was ready to have a child, and I did think he was a good candidate. Everything had to be renegotiated. I'm telling you, this top to bottom, the entire agreement is up on end, but in the favor of the best interest of the child. So here we are. My child is 5. He lives on property with us. He had to move from Oregon to Los Angeles, and we are an intact family. So it went from a known donor to a complete and totally involved co-parenting relationship because of the needs of the child.
You must have a really big property.
I keep accommodating.
It's a growing property.
It's a growing thing.
And did you guys have any legal agreement or anything, or the first time or the second time? Or
We did actually consult an attorney, and he's wincing because we were told something that was inaccurate apparently. That if we had a good written contract, we had gone to counselors, we felt very confident. We'd known each other for well over 15 years. And we consulted an attorney that said, you know, this is what's going to cost, and the legal precedent really hasn't been set to really make this to legally bind this contract. Just be on the birth certificate together. Just do this together, your parents, and keep agreements the way people keep agreements. And we felt that was sufficient. Do I recommend that to people? No. Will I do that again? No. I think there's no downside in getting the expert, the best advice you can get from an attorney who's used to doing these types of agreements. And it's in the best interest of the child. Not to rely on that because you want to do your own diligence and be on the right track. But like if somebody bumps their head and goes nuts, how are we going to reinforce this contract, right? I mean, so.
And Dean, can you talk a little bit about our co-parenting agreements binding and what steps can someone take to protect themselves in case, you know, sort of problem with their potential co-parent happen down the road?
Sure. And I'll use Rachel, if you don't mind, as an example. There's a lot of ways under the law to either become a parent intentionally, become a parent unintentionally, lose your parental rights intentionally, or lose them unintentionally if you don't follow certain steps and do certain things. So, for example, you're a known donor with your second child. Did you do the donation through a licensed IVF physician?
Yes,
Okay.
we did it through the
And that's why your lawyer then may have correctly said he has no rights, because under the Sperm Donor Act, if you donate sperm through a licensed physician in a clinical setting, then you do not have parental rights. You lose your parental rights, which is a case that's in the news right now involving that actor Jason Patrick. I think his name's Jason Patrick. He said he wanted to be a parent at one point. He said he didn't at another point, but when he donated his sperm, he did it in a clinical setting through a doctor. Well, guess what? You have no parental rights. You can regain them. There's another presumption in the family code that if you take a child into your home and hold that child out as your own and you parent that child, that you can acquire parental rights. But that's a pretty big hurdle. And you don't want to be in that situation where you're trying to jump through every hoop possible to prove you're a parent if that's what you wanted from the beginning. So what I would tell you is, if you want to have a valid and enforceable co-parenting agreement, you probably are not going to want to do a donation through a clinical setting. Or if you do, we're going to have written waivers whereby you are specifically rejecting and not accepting the Sperm Donor Act waiver and are both stated and named as what we call intended parents at the time that the embryos are created. And then there's different presumptions that apply, whether you're using a surrogate or if you're not using a surrogate. I think in Rachel's case, Rachel carried the child. She did not use a surrogate. Her parental rights are automatically presumed to exist because she gave birth. If they'd used a surrogate, we would go to court and we would have her parental rights finalized and terminate the parental rights of the surrogate. So there's a lot of different steps that we have to take from the very beginning to make sure that what the intentions of the parties are actually come to fruition on the back end.
When you say from the very beginning, you mean
before you create those embryos.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the law in California, as it stands right now, is, and it started with a case called Buzanka versus Buzanka, and it's not even really codified. I mean, for a long time, we were doing things with no law. It was just a Wild West. I would go to a judge who I knew was friendly, and I would ask her to sign a judgment, and she would give it to me. And she was a rogue judge, so she didn't really care about getting reelected or anything, and it was great. then laws, some case law came down, but it comes very slowly. Case law comes slowly, and it's only when people file appeals and can afford to finance an appeal. So without statutory law created by lawmakers and without case law, we still very much even today operating in gray areas. If you want a co-parenting agreement that's valid and enforceable, the law with Buzanka is that at the time or the moment that those embryos are created, whoever the contract says the intended parents are, that's who the legal parents are going to be. That's how we get judgments in surrogacy cases and in egg donation cases and in sperm donation cases. It's all based on contract, and that's the law of the land for the last 12 years, and that will be the law. They're not going to change that law.
I think it's safe to say that whether you're using a known donor, a co-parent, you should really, each party should see a lawyer and just know the facts and get to and take steps to protect themselves. You know, it doesn't matter if you meet the person online and you've only known them for a year, or you've known them for 20 years and they're your best friend. You know, I've seen situations where, you know, where couples are looking to their friend to be a sperm donor. There's a famous case in Florida where a lesbian couple asked their best friend, a guy, to donate his sperm. A few months pregnant, they didn't have any agreement or anything like that. He assumed he was going to be, you know, a real parent, more involved, and he was from Italy. He saw him taking the baby to summers in Italy to see his parents and all that. And about halfway through the pregnancy, the couple was like, "Oh no, like you misunderstood. Like we don't want you to be involved. Like you're maybe down the road, but right now we just want to be the primary parents." And he didn't see the child for a couple of years, and there was a tremendous court battle that lasted a few years, and they finally resolved, and it became one of the first cases in Florida where more than two parents are listed on the birth certificate. So they reached some kind of, you know, amicable agreement, but not after, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and a few years of, you know, hating each other. So you know, it doesn't matter if you know the person or not, or how long you've known them, or if you think they're your friend. You should still see a lawyer and know what the rights are and draft an agreement. And by the way, a co-parenting agreement can include, you know, it can be basic thing in terms of, you know, finances, who's paying for this, who's paying for that. It can include estate planning. It can include life insurance. You know, it can be as comprehensive as you want it to be. And I think for, you know, the couple $1,000s or however much it ends up costing, obviously it's more if there's more involved, you'll save yourself a lot of money down the road. And that's the reason why a lot of people don't end up doing it early on. They're like, "Oh my God, it's so expensive. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to see a fertility doctor. I don't want to see a therapist. I don't want to see a lawyer. It's going to cost thousands of dollars." It's going to save you a lot of pain and suffering later on, should anything happen, unless you're living in an ideal scenario. And I wanted to ask Elaine, when someone come to you and people are, you know, using either a known donor or a co-parenting situation, what do you think the main criteria should be for these two people, or three people, or four people, or whatever the situation is, to determine if they're, you know, ready to go on this journey together? What are the main sources of conflict that they should be looking out for?
I mean, that's a great question, because it has less to do with the pragmatics of the situation. And I always say to someone that the best person to pick your donor is you. You can't rely on your doctor, you can't rely on your therapist, you can't rely on the attorney, even though we can do it. But I look at it, it's what your heart tells you. Something is going to speak to you that this is the right person. Of course, integrity is important, trust is important, but really what speaks to you, because you will know what feels right to you and you have to trust it. Of course, you don't want a sociopath and you don't want somebody that is mentally ill, but if you meet the person or you know the person, I think you have a much better opportunity to assess that for yourself. You can tell that I have a bit of a bias, and I know with sperm donation, particularly, the opportunity to actually meet your donor does not really exist unless you find your own donor outside of those venues. But the issue is that if you know, a lot of people are afraid to meet their donor. And I'm saying, wait a minute, think about why you're afraid. There is nothing wrong with meeting that person who's going to help you. Just like with co-parenting, you're going to spend time with them. And I'm not saying with a donor that you have to spend a year assessing them and seeing if you're compatible. But don't close your eyes to actually doing an open donation. Some of you will say, oh, I think that's a great idea after thinking about it and sort of dismantling all your fears and concerns. And some of you will say, no, I'd rather do an anonymous donation. I have to tell you, as you can tell, I have a bias. But I do respect those of you who think an anonymous donation is a better way to go. But you have to trust yourself. Don't leave it up to us.
Do you think there's a right, if someone uses a known donor and they or an open donation where the person is made available, is there a right age for that person to have involvement in the child's life, or is it too young, or teenagers, or wait till they're 18?
Can I just
Yeah, of course.
ask you to clarify something? I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you use the word donation, to me as a lawyer, that means that the person is not going to have any legal right or have
Right.
any parenting relationship.
That's
So
not
I
co-parenting.
think, right, I think you need to draw a distinction
Well-
between, even whether it's open donation just means you know the identity of your donor.
Right.
But donation connotes by its very definition that person has no role in your child's life
Yeah.
legally.
Well,
So I just want to clarify that.
yeah, I wasn't talking. Yeah, I was talking more about open donation, where people are they don't know the person, but they might know him down the road. Because we had the session yesterday about donor siblings, and there was some people were against them meeting the other siblings of the same donor, and then some other people were have met 12 different kids from the same donor, and we're talking about those experiences. But it turns out that all of the children at some point, want to know who their bio mom or dad is, and maybe, I don't know if they're going to have a full-time relationship with them, but
It's just like siblings, anywhere. Some siblings get along with one another, and some siblings are estranged and don't have that much to do with each other. But it can't hurt them. Right. Ultimately, it's another person in their lives, depending on what the relationship, how it evolves. You can just grow into it or not grow into it. I don't think we have to be afraid of it from the get-go, is what I'm trying to say. In terms of when to start this open relationship, it really depends on the attitudes of the parents and the comfort with the parents. If the parents are comfortable with how they came to parenthood, then they have a much better chance of growing a healthy child and healthy relationship with their child. If they're still uncomfortable with doing donation or doing co-parenting, then they're going to have and run into some problems.
Dean, and we were talking about on the phone a few days ago, you were saying, look, you're either a parent or you're not. So if say a lesbian couple goes to their friend who they're like, hey, we can you be our sperm donor? That person's not going to be on the birth certificate. That person is not going to be, it depends on what agreement they come up with, but does that person have any rights if he changes his mind?
Well, that entirely depends on how you do it from the beginning. If he's going to be their donor and they're going to go home and they're going to use a turkey baster, and they're not going to do it in a clinical setting, and then he wants to assert some parental rights later, he's going to win because they did not have a written contract. They did not go through a licensed physician in a clinical setting. And it doesn't matter what they said to each other orally. It matters what the law is. So if that couple came to me and said, we want to use Joe over here as our donor, and we all agree Joe's not going to have parental rights, then we would draft up the appropriate legal documents to make sure that Joe does not have any parental rights. Now, the agreements are only as strong and as valid as the people allow them to be because, like I said, there are presumptions. So if they, after that was done, allowed Joe to come into their home or on property and live with them for the next 5 years, and they put Joe on as father on school records, and the baby called Joe daddy, and they lived the life as father and child, then Joe could go back to court under the family code and say that he has acquired what we would call presumed parent status. And now the law, beginning in 2014 in California, is more than two people can have legal parental status. Right. So he could win. So it's not only how you start it, it's how you live it and how you finish it.
And with that new law, could they also go after him for financial support, or
if they do it the wrong way? Again, it all depends on what the intentions of the parties are.
Can I just say something? Yeah. You know, I'd like to say something about bonding. In terms of, yes, there's the law and who has parental rights, but children, by and large, they're going to bond with whoever loves them and takes care of them. They are not going to bond to a genetic donor if that genetic donor is not in their lives, or even if a parent is not in their lives. But children don't care a lot about genetics. They care about who loves them, who holds them, and who takes care of them. So again, there's a real difference between what the law states and what your heart and the psychology shows you in terms of those relationships.
I'm so glad you said that because I've been burning to say. Back to co-parenting, when I was going to have my second child and I didn't have a parenting partner set up, I bought anonymous sperm. And I wrestled with this, and I read quite a bit of information about children who come from anonymous donors having almost like this identity crisis, this ghostly parent that they can project their fantasies and fears onto. And it reinforced that the way I had done this parenting agreement in the past is I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to do it this way. I'm not going to do an anonymous donor if I can do something else. I think it's great that we have these options, and if that's what a person is led to do, then great. But I think it's also very valid to go on a site like this, to look through other people who also want to be a parent and see if you can first find someone you can actually parent together and be parents together, so that in the child's best interest is to have as many invested, loving, committed family members as possible. So there's no downside on that. And so before running to a sperm bank and having to deal with a lot of these issues, for me, it was really a good move to create a partnership. So, I mean, shared responsibilities, everything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the site is, really trying to do, is to make it, if you see someone's profile that you like, get to know as much about them as possible, before you even meet up with them, to see if this is something that you think that someone that can complement, your lifestyle and your parenting views, and also be a resource for, a lot of people don't know this information, and that's why we have a Learn page where it talks all about different, co-parenting and sperm donor laws in different states and countries, therapist options, recommendations, and health and well-being. And we try to just be a great resource for everything involved in co-parenting and known donor arrangements. Okay, we're going to open up to some audience questions now. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes, they do. I can tell. Look at those people.
If anybody else wants to have the mic first, I'm already in a co-parenting relationship, which is I'm co-parenting 3-year-old twins with my with a woman who actually was my ex-romantic partner. But I'm curious from Dean and Elaine, because we've only been co-parenting like this for 3 years, like how have you seen this track over time? How has it, how has this kind of partnered parenting tracked with like a divorced parenting, co-parenting, legally and psychologically, emotionally?
Well, ladies first.
Okay, I'm a lady. It can go 2 ways. It could go 3 ways. It can go 5 ways. And what happens is, I think the biggest, I'll be sort of the naysayer on this, the biggest problem that you can run into if one of the co-partners finds another love relationship.
That's what I would also say.
That's where you really have to work hard and really operate in the best interest of the child and come to a meeting of the minds on how you're both going to handle this and what part this new person is going to play in this child's life. You can work it out very well in a very healthy way, or it can wreak havoc on the family's life.
And so when we track them, the way we track them, that's where we see things kind of blow up. It's all hunky-dory and fun until one of the two partners finds a new lover. And then that person exerts their influence. It may or may not be influence that's in the best interest of the kids. And then that person is forced to choose between listening to their co-parent, listening to their new person. The kids are stuck in the middle. Oftentimes, things aren't written down and filed with the court like we like, and it becomes a big mess. What I'm just curious to ask you is, did one of you carry the babies?
I did. I carried the babies.
And were they your eggs or her eggs?
They were my eggs, and I went to the cryobank, and but she's on the certificate as the father, because that was all we had the option of putting on. But yeah, she's parental rights, I would imagine.
I would say, should I not say? I would say that she really does not have parental rights. She has been living with the children and holding them out as her own for 3 years, and she could go on that argument, but I've seen cases like hers go the other way. A lot of the case law that we have coming down right now, interestingly, is involving lesbian couples as opposed to gay men, because gay men typically can't carry the baby, so they have to get a surrogate, so they have to have a contract. Typically, things happen.
Really?
We have a lot of modern technology. So there has to be a contract, and once lawyers get involved and there's contracts involved, those types of things get covered, and we go to court and we terminate the parental rights of the surrogate and we finalize the parental rights of the two intended fathers, and we don't have issues. But with lesbian couples, they just don't feel the need to get lawyers involved. And so all of these cases that come down the line, down the pike, KG versus EL, that's always the initials, always involve lesbian couples in cases just like yours. Now, in a more perfect world, you would have carried the babies and delivered them, but they would have been her eggs. And you would have done it through an IVF doctor. So that would give her more parental rights, but I would say we still have time. You could finalize those parental rights.
I mean, I think ideally, if your ex is in a relationship with somebody else, you guys are still the parents, but that person. So you guys have separate lives now, but you get together for reasons of your children, and but sometimes you have to give up a little bit to let the children have time with their other mom and her new girlfriend. And that's just, I think, the most easiest way to, if everyone acquiesce and kind of that person becomes a natural extension of your family unit, but you guys are still the primary, parents and make the decisions. But but sometimes, I'm dating someone who was married before. She has 2 kids, and I live with 2 kids and her, and I'm essentially a stepdad, and but I try to respect the parents' decisions, and when he comes in and does stuff with them, and they respect me as an authority figure, but I try to when there's certain decisions to be made, I might say what my opinion is to the mother, but ultimately they're the parents and they make all the major decisions. So I think it's just it could easily blow up into, you guys hate each other, you don't talk to each other for a long time, and then one of you tries to, just be the primary parent, and I think that's where you end up, with years of heartache and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So, I think there's ways to work around it. I think seeing someone like Elaine it would be great to figure all that stuff out and have someone to talk to work through those issues.
Can I say something about that? Yeah. I'm not a therapist, but I have decades of experience. And one thing I can say, if you're embarking on considering a co-parenting relationship, I put assessments in my book. Are you ready for parenting? Are you ready for a parenting partnership? It's a very specialized situation. And the kinds of agreements that need to be set up before you even conceive are about what if somebody else finds another mate. In our case, both of my parenting agreements address that very clearly. And in the first one, we said our primary commitment is to the family, to us, to raising the child. If we hope that we both meet a soulmate, and we will agree to support that as much as possible. But that would be a secondary role, and only if that other relationship will be supportive and respectful of our primary concern, which is the kid, the child, the vulnerable person. The same thing in the next parenting partnership. And even really, and when we did it, he had a girlfriend who I was hoping so much would be another co-parent, a co-mom. And when they split up amicably, I was devastated. And he was like, well, I'll meet someone else. But I really was hoping that would be an additional invested parenting partner to our daughter's life. So it's a paradigm shift to assume that this is a threat. A new person can be invited as an added benefit to the child. It depends on how you work it and how you set it up ahead of time.
Any other questions?
So Yvonne and Elaine, actually also, is there some kind of structured psychological process that you'd suggest that couples go through to sort of take stock of all of the issues that they're going to encounter as co-parents?
Do you mean when they're getting to know each
When they're
other
getting to
before
know-
they have
yeah,
kids?
when they're getting to know each other, something that's a little bit more structured to ensure that they actually explore all of the things that they'll encounter.
I mean, I think it starts off a lot like a weird form of dating, where you're online dating. So you meet a lot of you send a bunch of messages, then you get comfortable to exchange an email address and a phone number. Then you meet at Starbucks or wherever, and instead of the flirting and trying to get in the person's pants, you're learning about this person and seeing thinking, hey, is this someone that I can see myself that can become a friend, that a partner. That does this person have traits that I would love in a dad or a mom? Do we have similar backgrounds? And figure out. I think you have to figure out what your most important criteria is. Whether it's religion, whether you want someone to be splitting income, or whether you want someone to be paying more or less. Do you want to be living? Do you see yourself living in the same house while the baby is young and helping with all of that, the babysitting, the bills, the schooling? Figuring out all of these things. I mean, we have a couple hundred questions that you can ask, and then it compares to how important do you think it is that the other person feels the same about this issue or similarly, and I think it's just a getting to know you period. And then as it gets to a point, let's find out what mom and dad think, my parents, what my sister thinks, my brother thinks, what my best friends think. Say, hey, I'm thinking, I want to have kids, and I met this guy or I met this girl, and I really like them, but maybe it's not going to be romantic, or he's gay and I'm straight, or whatever it is. But there's something there, and what do you think about that? And starting to get comfortable with that. And I don't know, Elaine, if you can add anything to that.
Well, basically, I think that's a good start, but at some point, I do think you should include, and I don't want to be self-promoting, a psychological counseling over a couple of sessions, and also a legal person to come in and formalize that agreement.
I completely agree.
Self-promote. Elaine's going to promote me. Because if you want to, we have a lot of cases together. We've worked together for 20 years. We have a co-parenting case that we're working on right now. And if you want to have a co-parenting relationship, I mean, it's a very fragile, delicate, important, the most important relationship that you're going to have. And if you date someone and you break up, it's over. If you get a divorce and you're done with that person, it's over. When you co-parent with somebody, it's forever. I have an ex-wife, and I have to see her at my 26-year-old daughter's wedding next year. So and I don't want to see her, but that's how it goes. You
stuck with her.
co-parent for life. This is a life decision.
Yeah.
So you better have it written by a lawyer. You better have a good psych evaluation. You better do a lot of due diligence and pick the right person. God, pick the right person.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely essential. And then you never, and people have issues. Like I have some clients who are like getting to know, they've been talking for a few months, but they're at a standstill because they're like, I don't know how to proceed. Or, I'm afraid, I want to be taken care of financially for the first few years so I can take care of the baby. How do I bring that up? Or, I want to raise my child Jewish more than, and he's, Catholic, and I don't know how to, and I don't know if I want a little bit of both. So having a third party, like a therapist, talk about these things either together or individually, I think will help you develop the tools and decide whether this is the right decision for you or this is the right person for you to do something like this. And that's why I talk to some clients on the phone and I try to be as objective as possible and kind of hear where they're coming from and and give my sort of advice. But then when it's time for the professionals, I recommend some of these guys, and I think they'll really help you get clarity on answering some of these questions and decide if it's the right thing for you. Okay. All right, we'll be wrapping up. We can talk about this for hours, but
I have books.
oh, Rachel has. Oh yeah, how many do you have? 10 or something?
I think I have more than 10 books to give away. I'll sign for you if you are interested in have all the details from how do you meet someone to how do you court them and what should you ask and then how you should go step by step, like 12 months, and I will give them to you.
Yeah, Rachel will be giving them. She might even sign it for you over here.
Sign it for you.
I'd like to thank my panel because I couldn't do this without them, and my idea would just be totally crazy without like professionals, helping us make it work. I really appreciate you guys being here. I'd like to thank Rachel, who's always an invaluable resource and a wealth of knowledge. Dean for coming by. It was really great advice and interesting stuff, and I think all of their contact information, or you can find them, you could find them all online and find their websites and Twitter and all that. I'd like to thank Elaine Gordon for always her invaluable advice. Hope that heals up very soon. You can contact everyone. You can go to fertilityplanit.com and learn all about the speakers and the topic and everything about getting pregnant and who you're going to do that with at fertilityplanit.com. You can also watch all of these videos. All of these sessions are taped and being live streamed around the world for free. You can follow Fertility Planit on Twitter or Facebook for news and conversations about the sessions. I'd really like to thank Fora.tv for an amazing production job and live streaming and recording all these programs and just doing a good job of putting it all together. And thanks to our sponsors, Modamily and the Family Equality Council for supporting this conversation. Thanks to our audience for joining because we'd just be talking to ourselves if you guys weren't here. And I hope we're really helping if you're considering this or please come up to us afterwards and we'll be hanging out and asking questions, and you can always go to any of our websites to find out about more information. And you can please hashtag on Twitter at FPLA14. We love to hear from you. And thanks for making this weekend fun, guys. I know you guys were all at several sessions, and we really appreciate it, and look forward to doing it again next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.